Welcome to Awakening Streams, the podcast of One River Zen Meditation Center in Ottawa, Illinois. Hosted by Sensei Michael Bruner. Learn more, donate, and practice with us at oneriverzen.org.
Every one of us knows the feeling of being swept away by the currents of our own thinking, right? It's almost like we get caught in a trance, karmically entranced. Every thought leads to another, and we can't seem to find a way out. It's like a dog chasing its own tail. The holidays are a good time for this. They bring us in contact with some of the deepest karmic grooves of our lives, the family dynamics that we've lived for decades, all the songs that we know by heart, the unspoken resentments, the unmet expectations, they all come to the fore. And it can be very easy to feel trapped, as though the self that we've constructed over the years has actually become a cage. We become prisoners of our own story. Carl Jung described a similar phenomenon in his exploration of what he called the shadow. The hidden parts of ourselves that emerge in moments of stress or in moments of vulnerability. And if these shadows are left unchecked, they'll make themselves known. They'll dominate us. Because when the song starts, they're going to join right in. They know all the score. But is this self, the one who feels stuck, the one who feels inadequate, the entirety of who we are? There's a case in the Mumonkan. It's the 12th case. It's called Zuigan Calls Himself Master. So Master Zuigan offers us a glimpse of another way. He had a very unusual daily practice. Might even call it peculiar. He would call to himself, "Master." And he would respond, "Yeah?" And he would say, "Thoroughly awake. Thoroughly awake." And he'd respond, "Yes. Yes. Don't be deceived by others. Any day or any time. No. No." First glance, you may look at it and say, Zuigan has absolutely lost his mind. This Zen thing can be taken in too high of a dose. Yeah, maybe that's where he's gone. But the truth is, he actually found his mind. He found his mind. When Zuigan demonstrates this type of orderliness, he's actually found his compass. He knows how to orient himself back to reality. Back to the truth of this moment. When he calls to himself, he isn't speaking to the fragmented, the conditioned self. He's speaking to something greater, something that transcends all of the various identities that we carry. And that's where Jung's understanding of the psyche offers a useful lens here. Zuigan's practice mirrors the dynamic between our ego, right, our small everyday self, and the self with a capital S, the big self. Call it big mind. You can call it Buddha nature. Call it whatever. You can call it the Holy Spirit. Call it whatever you want. The archetype of wholeness and the ultimate unifying center of our being. When Zuigan calls out Master and answers yes, he isn't losing himself. He's integrating himself. It's akin to what Jung would call the transcendent function. Opposites, they're all within us. Habitual roles and wisdom are all present. And in this way, they're reconciled into a harmonious whole. But when we talk about it that way, it sounds very romantic. Don't get confused by that. Zen practice is actually very down to earth. It's always right here. We use a lot of fancy and flowery words to do it. But at the end of the day, it's just a finger pointing to the moon. Don't mistake your finger for the moon. So every day Zuigan calls to himself, every day he answers. He's reminding himself to be thoroughly awake and not to be deceived. Is he speaking to himself as we might when we're lost in thought? No. Zuigan's not talking to himself. He's speaking to the master within, the ever-present wisdom that guides us when we're willing to listen. Yeah. When we do this, when we dialogue with the master, we're able to pierce the illusion of each of those small selves, reconnecting with the boundless truth of our very existence. What we think of as ourself is often a singular, we think of it as a singular monolithic entity, but it's anything but. In Zen, sometimes we have a way of simplifying this by calling it the small self. It's almost as if it's like a black box, right? We have lived experience in, history, delusion out, right? But if you lift the cover of that box, there's a lot going on. Yeah? Within each of us, there's a chorus of identities. If you don't know this, then just call out to them. They'll answer, right? Sometimes we have the wounded child, someone who was formed very young, yeah, someone who responds to a lot of the hurts that come up. All of us had an opportunity to get hurt as children, some more than others, right? But there was a time when we recognized that the initial transcendent oneness that we were born into is supplanted by some fragmented notion of conceptual idealism. That's when we have mom and me. I didn't know there was a difference initially, but then there is. And when that chasm forms and it broadens, right, or even when there's some malevolent intent with some of the actors in our childhood, then those wounds can become even more separated or even more deep and be even more controlling. That child's still there. Or the one who worries. Some of you know this one. Yeah. Looks at every single situation, is endlessly good at spinning scenarios in a way where they're always going to turn out wrong. It knows exactly what the worst case scenario that could happen. And by the way, is so intent on staring at it that he accidentally rides the horse right into it every time, right? Or the estranged partner. Yeah, isn't it amazing how they continue to live on within us sometimes? Burdened by stories of separation, failure, being let down and letting others down. Jung gives them a label. He calls them psychological complexes. You could say they're emotionally charged patterns of thought and behavior that influence us, often unconsciously. We need to bring these into the light. Yeah? They can't be allowed to just operate on their own. Each complex, like a karmic groove, dominates our thoughts and actions if we don't turn into it, if we don't recognize it. Yeah? But with all of these voices, there's also the deeper unifying self that's there too. The master that Zuigan calls out to. The master that each one of you calls out to when you show up here for a retreat, when you execute your brave stepping out of your conditioned everyday lives to go out onto a limb that you know is going to fall, that you know is going to break. Every one of you knows, right? You know, but you say, well, at least it's a safe enough scenario that there's someone there to pick me up. Yeah. And of course, I'm happy to fill that role, but don't get confused into thinking that I'm somewhere outside. Yeah? You guys all just chose for some reason to have a middle-aged, gray-beard looking guy speak to you as your unconscious master within when you show up. Yeah? Each one of you possesses that same face. Yeah? We're not bound by these fragmented identities, right? Unless, of course, we fail to acknowledge their existence and honor them. Every one of these identities was formed when some part of the story forked. Yeah? And we refused to be aware or awake to our lived experience as it was. So if you continue to ignore these voices, they'll continue to go off on their own separate path. Now that separate path is still within you. So you walk around looking like you're almost schizophrenic, being pulled this way and that, right? All over the place. depending on who's in charge that given day. Yeah. This is an individualization or individuation journey. We're looking to integrate all these fragmented parts of ourselves into a unified, awakened whole. We're needing to bring our conscious awareness, the light of our conscious awareness, so broad that all of the actors are on stage. Some of these you can have mercy for, right? The wounded child for sure. The one who worries, absolutely. Although maybe you get angry at these two. Don't shut up their whining, right? They will if you listen and you honor what they have to say. Some of these you don't want to know are there. The one who's done harm to others, right? You certainly don't want to bump into. You push those outside the light of your conscious awareness. You got to bring those characters in too, and you got to talk to them. You got to ask them why they did what they did. You got to see what needs they had that weren't being met. Remember, when you awaken, you inherit the whole universe. All the universe's resources are your resources. But you have to be able to apply them judiciously. And to do that, you have to be aware of where the needs are. So you have to ask difficult questions. Talk to seedy characters that you thought you parted ways with a long time ago to make this happen. If you navigate the karmic groove skillfully this way, the psychological complexes that would normally overwhelm us can actually work to make us stronger and to make our practice stronger. Shunryu Suzuki talks about this in his section inside of Zen Mind Beginner's Mind when he talks about mind weeds. He talks about some of the hardest parts of our practice, some of the most challenging things we come through, right? We can actually become the compost, for future growth if we allow them to be. But that means that you're actually weeding the entire yard. If I were to walk into some of our minds, right, I would see an amazing front yard and a gilded front wall to our building. And you turn over, you're like, why'd you build it next to that? Oh, wait a minute. That is your lot too, right? You just ignored that one. You pushed all of the junk over there. There's rusted cars in the front yard, people walking around who weren't given the correct dental care because you disowned them. They're still at the same address, folks. I remember one time going to see my family. It was a holiday dinner, and there were usual tensions that were bubbling under the surface. I had a lot put on me when I was young, and so I found myself slipping into the role of the one who fixes things. It's always a good character for me. I do good work here, right? Trying to smooth over awkward silences and placate family members who were at odds. But then something shifted, and I remember to pause and to breathe and to call inwardly, Master. And when I took a step back from the Master, I recognized the one who fixes things surfaces, right, when there's others that are pushed outside of our conscious awareness. Right? The one who feels insecure or inadequate can depart. Right? And I don't have to bring him into my conscious awareness. But all of a sudden, right then and there, they were both standing there. And I realized that within me, I had both of those. All I had to do was shift my gaze, shift my perspective from one to the other. And then I could recognize the wholeness that was available in that moment. That the one who fixes things, right, and the one who feels inadequate, right, were ultimately one. But that sometimes it's useful for us to be able to recognize the different ways we fragment the ego. And to be able to see things from these various perspectives so that we can see the entirety of this human life and this human experience. Yeah. When the wounded child meets the brave one, wow, what an inspiration it is for both. Yeah. The brave one becomes braver because they see that they have what it takes to transcend all the difficulties that are within, and the wounded child knows there's a protector. Yeah. Who's going to hear what they say and honor it and valiantly defend. This amazing practice. You say, well, this doesn't sound a lot like Zen. It sounds like you just appropriated Jung. Maybe Jung appropriated the other way around. All of these practices are there. Don't worry, don't take my word for it. Go actually look at it. Practice it yourself and see. This is a journey towards wholeness and authenticity. It's not always going to look sane to the world around us as conditioned by reason. Right? Yeah, every time I go home and I see my parents, my father asks me, how's the cult going? So, it's going good. I got a lot of Japanese scrolls. It's a lot of fun. You going to grow your hair back sometime soon? Oh, I don't know. Probably not. Yeah. When we've seen through this Zen, when we've seen through this eye of integration, this lens that Jung did a good job describing, the message always comes to the fore the same way. The wisdom you seek is within you because there's nothing without. There's nothing without. And it's always ready to guide you back to the life that's been yours all along that you've been refusing to live. The Master is here right now waiting. Yeah. Along with a whole other host of characters, when we go and we bow at altars, and we look at Avalokitesvara, and we look at the Bodhisattva of compassion, or Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, we look and we're inspired, right, by Avalokitesvara's many arms, right, that can heal all the suffering they bear witness to, or Manjushri's sword that can cut through the elusive thoughts. I don't have to get stuck there. You can call out to those voices too, and they'll answer. All of them respond to the Master. You have that all within you. All you need to do is call. So just do it now. Master, what am I doing here sitting on this cushion listening to this talk? Yeah. It's always here. Yeah. So just appreciate your life by looking at all the cast of characters that are at play and see the whole wonder of that landscape and the totality that can be yours, not just so that your suffering is ameliorated, but so that the suffering of everyone you come in contact with is. Folks, every one of you has suffering in your lives, people you're coming in contact with. Every one of you. If you don't call on the Master and you don't see through her eyes, no one will.
Thank you for joining us. If this podcast was meaningful for you and supported your practice, please give us a hand by visiting us at oneriverzen.org today.